say what you want about the Chinese state, they have done an incredible job of stitching up this industry, right? It is a Harvard business case on how to monopolize an industry and own it, and they own it.
Before we begin our conversation with Dave Wargo today, I wanted to mention the fact that Wealthion is preparing and about to publish a white paper on investment opportunities in the rare earth space. And if any viewers are interested in reading this information, please click on the link in the description below, and we will send it out to you promptly. Additionally, for those who are looking at ways to navigate the current market environment and would enjoy a free portfolio review, Wealthion is happy to guide you to some registered investment advisors who can help in that regard. And if you're interested in that opportunity, please go to wealthion.com/free and fill out the link. And with that, let's get on to our conversation with Dave. Greetings and welcome to our Wealthion show. My name is Trey Reik of Bristol Gold Group, and we are visiting today with Dave Wargo, CEO of SCP Resource Finance, an independent broker-dealer and merchant bank which specializes in the global mining sector, offices in Toronto and London. SCP was formed in May 23 in a management-led buyout of Sprott Capital Partners. Now, I've had the opportunity to work with SCP for a couple of years, and I can attest there are few individuals with as much comprehensive knowledge and experience in the mining sector as Dave. And most importantly, Dave's prominent skill is identifying profitable opportunities in the mining sector, a truly rare talent. Dave, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, hey, no problem, Trey. Thank you very much.
Now, the topic which brings us together that we'd like to pick your brain a bit about today is receiving tons of coverage in the financial press, and that is the rare earth segment of the mining industry. I think the topic has been on the front page of the New York Times every day for the past week or so. So why do you think the topic of rare earths is receiving so much attention? Is it related to Trump tariffs?
Well, it is related to the tariffs. I mean, the tariffs have, it's become a trade war really between, well, not really, it is a trade war between the Chinese and the Americans, and the Americans with their tariffs. And so the counter tariffs by China are cutting off critical minerals, which now have included rare earths. And that's what's driving the administration's, response to find alternative sources. And it's really what has created the buzz around the entire space. And if you recall, back in 2012, there was a Japanese fishing boat incident where a Japanese boat collided with a Chinese boat. I don't know the exact story itself, but what happened back then in 2012, the Chinese state basically cut off rare earth supply into Japan, and neodymium on the back of the supplies being cut off into Japan went up to about $750 a kilogram. That was call it 2012. And if you go back to like 2005, so a 7-year period, neodymium used to sell for $7.50 a kilogram, right? So it went up 100 times based on that. And this industry, because it's controlled by the Chinese, 98% of all the downstream processing is done by China. And I would say roughly 80% of every rare earth molecule in the world originates from China as well. So it's a very, very big lever for the state. And when they decide to use it, it really causes a lot of problems internationally. And then you'll see the whole rare earth space catch a bid, and then you'll see all the articles in the New York Times that we're seeing this week. So it's very, very relevant, and it's an interesting time to actually be in the space, because this is when the rare earth space is really fun to be a part of.
So backing up a bit, I think
Yeah.
most people have heard about rare earths, but I think it's safe to say very few actually have much tangible knowledge about the industry segment. So, in preparing for our conversation, I've read that there are
Yeah.
17 metals which compose the rare earth category. Is that accurate? And what
Yeah.
actually grants any metal membership in the rare earth category?
Well, it's the rare earth category is also referred to as the lanthanide series of elements, which is the bottom line on the periodic table. It starts at cerium and it ends with lutetium,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the basket. There's no other rare earths. Sometimes you get germanium and gallium lumped in with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yttrium, because it comes from the Chinese southern clay deposits, used to be considered, but it's in the basket. But it's really just that lanthanide series of 17 elements at the bottom of the periodic table, of which there's really only four that drive the
I
economics,
was
and
going to
that would
ask you, are
be
there 5 or 6 that are the real
yeah.
deal?
Yeah, so there used to be a lot more utility across the basket, but when you went from plasma display panels to LEDs, you cut out a lot of yttrium, you cut out a lot of europium. Those markets just crashed, and so there's four elements that really are what everybody's after, and that would be neodymium and praseodymium and DY and TB. And ND and PR would be neodymium and praseodymium. They're the primary elements that go into the magnets. And then the dysprosium and terbium are the two elements that go into the magnets as well, but they go in as dopants. They're not primary. You put like a couple thousand ppm instead of like neodymium iron boron magnet. About 30% of that magnet would be neodymium. Okay. And then you dope it with the DY and TB. And what the DY and TB does at like 2000 ppm, which is about 4.5 kilograms per ton of it'd be 4.5 kilograms of DYTB per ton of NdPr magnets. That's basically what you dope into it. And what the DYTB does, and why it's so critical, and why everybody's scouring the earth for it, is it actually allows the magnet to sit in an environment where you've got temperature extremes. And when you look at a magnet's life, over the life of a magnet, as you heat a magnet up and cool it down back to room temperature and do the same over and over again, you have multiple cycles. Think about operating a car. The DYTB allows you to keep the magnetic properties over a temperature gradient. And so without that, you can't put these things under the hood of a car. And the magnetic properties will, fade away over time as you get more cycles through the magnet's life. So DYTB and NdPr drive the entire economics of the industry, and DYTB are the two southern heavy rares that everybody's looking for. And that's really all that counts when you find a rare deposit. And when you see these rare earth companies, they give the basket of what they have, they give the percentages of what each one is, and then they take the whatever price they find. I always find it funny. They find some price which is probably about 4 or 5 times over the actual market price, and then they say our MPV is this.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the space, but
Are the four
it's
that you mentioned the heavies, or am I confusing things? Are they the heavy
no.
rare?
So the light rares, they're typically found up in Inner Mongolia,
Mm-hmm.
okay, at Baotou, and that'd be cerium, lanthanum, neodymium, praseodymium, and a small cut called SEG, which is samarium, europium, gadolinium.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the light rares. Those are considered light rares.
Mm-hmm.
And the heavies, and those are found in northern China, just like they're found in California at Mountain Pass. And then what makes China so unique is they're just swimming in these ionic clay deposits in the south that are enriched in heavies, more so than any other place in the world that we know of yet today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes the rare earth industry in China so interesting, is because they have an endowment of both lights and, more importantly, the heavies, which allow them to monopolize the market.
Right.
So
So moving back to when all this stuff was created, why are rare earths rare? Is it an atomic property that's
no, I think
especially
they're
unique, or
yeah.
and do they
Well, they
always?
are unique. The chemical properties, like cerium's I don't know, it's like +3, +5. So it donates oxygen, it absorbs oxygen. So it's a great catalyst material. The valences are multivalences, so you get these unique properties.
Mm-hmm.
So they are unique.
And do they occur together generally?
Yeah. And in general, when they occur together, it's in specific ratios. So
Mm-hmm.
for like a light rare earth deposit, rule of thumb is 50% of it's cerium, 25% of it's lanthanum, 22% of it's neodymium, praseodymium, and the rest would be samarium, europium, gadolinium.
And your colleague Justin told me that one of the problems is you don't necessarily need as much of the ones that are more common. Is that correct?
No, you don't need them at all. Like if you think about it, like if you've got 22% is NdPr,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to drive your entire process to produce whatever the market needs for neodymium and praseodymium.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's about 2.2 times, 2.3 times more cerium in a ton of rare earth oxide, the basket, than there is of neodymium. So every kilogram of neo you produce, you're automatically producing 2.4 kilograms
Mm-hmm.
of cerium, right? So your cerium is building up. There is not enough applications in the world to absorb it all.
Mm-hmm.
So the price on that, and lanthanum for that fact, unless you're really adding a lot of value, it's not worth it. The Chinese own it, and they will own it forever, unless wage inflation there goes through the roof. I don't see that happening anytime soon. So
not to oversimplify it, but why the heck does China own this stuff? Is it because I've read that some of the stuff is mined by literally pouring very strong chemicals at the top of a hillside and then at the bottom of the hillside sort of collecting what falls out, which can't be great for the, like an environment.
No, I mean, like, look,
is that why they control it, or is it just because it's all there?
Well, okay, there's a few things. They control it. The most important reason why they control it, they have both heavies and lights in economic quantities,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They're swimming in the stuff. And the light rare earths is a byproduct of the iron ore deposits up in Inner Mongolia. So as you're producing iron ore up there, you're getting a side stream of rare earths, no different than a polymetallic deposit where you're producing zinc and lead, and you're getting a byproduct silver, right? So they're producing primary iron ore, they're getting a byproduct of neodymium. So that's coming off. So that's, they're just getting it no matter what. And they've got a tailings lagoon full of it. And then in the south, that's really the prize of the rare earth industry globally, is in southern ionic clays. And they're loaded with the heavies. And so they have the endowment, 1, 2. The state actually really endorsed the rare earth space when Deng Xiaoping opened up China to the world, which was, kind of in 91 or 92 or 93, one of those years where he gave his famous speech where, he's like, to be rich is to be glorious.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody got to work, and, the whole love trade of globalization just took off.
Mm-hmm.
So back then he made the comment, and this is Deng, he came in after Mao, and he said, the Saudi Arabians have oil and the Chinese have rare earths.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very important industry to us. And they have engineering programs in the country. Like, so it's truly, what are the Americans the best at? Like oil and gas technology, America would be dominant globally. And because there's a tremendous amount of R&D put in by Baker Hughes, Halliburton, and also, in the European Union, you'd have Schlumberger. And so there'd be a lot of IP there, right? And that's what the Chinese have done in the rare space. They've wrapped a lot of IP around separation. They're starting to do their own kind of material science. Funny enough, the neodymium iron boron magnet, which is what the Chinese are cutting the Americans off. It goes into miniaturization, and the weight to strength ratio of a magnet. I don't know if you remember, Trey, back in like the 80s or 90s, you'd buy your first computer and the thing would be the size of a shipping container, right? It's because the hard drive had ferrite magnets in it, and ferrite magnets aren't strong, and you need the more magnetic strength, the bigger the magnet, right? Less strength, more mass. So of the magnets that are out there, the neodymium iron boron is the best. It's the highest strength to weight ratio, and that allows you to shrink the amount of material you need to house it. And so you're taking kilograms off of cars, which saves in fuel economies. If you look at the new economy with the robots, and the Chinese have just taken our technology again and running with it, which is those robots, they move fluidly. All those movements are all done, through electrical current that are all running through, the magnetic battery, the magnets, right? They're driving the robots. They're driving miniaturization. Most electric cars will have the neodymium iron boron magnets in them. So the Americans invented it, and along with the Japanese, and the patents have kind of rolled off, and the Chinese are starting to really go into the market in a big way downstream, which really wasn't the case before, right?
Right.
It was usually they built they go to like an intermediate product and they'd sell it to the West. Now they're taking that intermediate product and they're taking it right to its refined stage, and then they're taking that and they're adding value to it. And if you want my rare earths, you buy my car, right? They've vertically integrated their entire economy, and it's going to be a formidable competitor.
Right. So let's take Canada with its natural resources per capita, which are off the charts. Do you guys have rare earths up there that can be developed?
Yep, we have rare earths. There's a couple of deposits out in BC that are pretty good.
And
there's lots up in the and there's
people are working on developing those today.
Yeah, they are, but like, the rare earth space really has to grow a lot more than it is now, and it will. It's going to take time. The deposits in Canada are okay. The ones with the higher grade are up in and around the Athabasca Basin, and they're loaded with uranium and thorium. And when you get uranium and thorium associated with your rare earths, because there is an ore type called monazite, which is loaded with uranium and thorium, and it's loaded with really interesting rare earth molecules. Then you have a bastnasite deposit.
Is the uranium good or bad? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's bad because it's radioactive, right? So you have to classify it. And then, there's only 2 or 3 people in the world outside of China that can process this stuff.
Gotcha.
And one of them's EFR in Blanding, Utah, which is run by Mark Chalmers. He's done a great job in going into the rare space. So,
and same with the U.S. I've read a lot about MP. Apparently, that's our big.
Yeah, that's Mountain Pass. It's actually one of the highest quality bastnasite deposits in the world. It's been in production for a long time. They're producing a concentrate, which, funny enough, they're sending to China to separate. So that's kind of embarrassing for the West.
So that's been our big mistake, is we just haven't focused on it. Is that fair in the West?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest mistake was offshoring, and we're all guilty of it in the West. But we offshored everything, and any developing country would take a third party's technology and run with it, right? And that's really what the Chinese did. So we don't have an industrial based economy really like we used to. Like, look at the U.S. Like, the U.S. used to have these institutions like Union Carbide, who I worked for when I graduated university, and it was they did everything right. And I think with the offshoring, you sell down divisions, you get out of industries, you stick to IP, and you think, okay, well, if I come up with this cool mousetrap, I'll get them to make it. But the problem with that is they go, yeah, that's a cool mousetrap, we'll copy it. Then all of a sudden you're competing against your own product and industry. So all this onshoring is going to have to come back. And I think everybody understands why. And then we're going to have to go through the growing pains, because like when you offshore, and we offshored for 30 plus years, okay, so you lose industries, but more importantly, your youth, what do? You lose engineers, you lose electricians, you lose steel workers, you lose millwrights. You don't have the human capital to reindustrialize your economy, right? So the biggest problem the West is going to have is not know-how, right? Because we're smart group people, and we've done it in the past. So it's going to be the number of people that can actively do the work, and it's going to take time to train people up, and that's going to be the biggest growing pain in this onshoring, is going from what I call an embarrassing tea and coffee and beer serving economy to an industrialized economy. And that's going to come with a lot of growing pains, right? There'll be a lot of upset people. And you got to love these memes that are coming out of China of, like, people making Nike shoes in Pennsylvania, everybody's overweight. So maybe, I think this is actually good. There's going to be growing pains. I don't think all the industry's coming back, but, look, if we can get the good stuff back and get the youth going into proper industries, it's probably long-term the right thing to do, right?
So going back to geography, there's been a lot of, press coverage of President Trump's efforts to, lock up the Ukraine's critical minerals. And I've heard a rumor from folks who know you well that you don't think there's a lot there.
No, I'll tell you what's there. It's oil and gas, more importantly, gas. And more importantly, all the pipelines from Russia come down into the Ukraine and then to the west to Europe. So if pipelines are a critical mineral, wink, wink, I think that's what that was all about.
Okay.
Yeah,
but they're not
turn it
loaded
on, turn
with
it
rare
off.
earths, you would say? Geologically?
No. They've got iron ore. I don't know. They've got some uranium there. It's not great, but they've got some. They've got great iron ore. They've got great coal. They've got great salt. But really the Ukraine, I think it's, Vlad wants to diversify his economy because oil and gas is rolling over, because the battery is the biggest headwind that industry's ever seen. 50% of his GDP is a function of oil and gas and oil and gas derivatives. And he looked to the southeast and he saw all these beautiful wheat fields of sunflower and canola. And he said, that's the breadbasket of Europe, and I got to hedge my oil. And that's why that all is going on. And the critical minerals, I think that's just politics.
It's just a cover.
Yeah, it's just politics.
So, and not to press the geography thing to a pulp, but if you were going to pick 2 or 3 areas outside China with the most rare earth promise, would they be the U.S. and Canada, or?
Well, okay, so
Mongolia?
No, yeah, okay, so listen, like the Molycarp deposit's a world-class deposit. They're getting deeper into it because it's been in production for a long time. It's an old asset. So as you're getting deeper, the weathering profile changes, and when the weathering profile changes, you get higher uranium and thorium, right? Because uranium and thorium gets washed out over millions of years as the deposit oxidizes. So it's a good deposit. But look, I mean, the world is going to more and more ionic clay deposits are being found around the world. If you look at Vietnam has some, Laos has some, Myanmar has them, right? That's well documented. The Chinese have them. So it's a whole system in that Southeast Asian corridor, because it's southern China, it's Vietnam, it's Laos. I would even think that Thailand might have some. And then there's and the reason why we like ionic clay deposits over any other type is that Mother Nature's done all the work for us, right? There's no drilling, there's no blasting, there's no crushing, there's no grinding, and there's no floating. Okay, that's half your capex is out the window.
Ratio.
Yeah, so you're like, well, the strip ratio on these clay deposits typically are like 0.
Okay,
it's just all mineralized. Just depends on the concentration. I forgot can we, you just took me off.
Well, we were just talking about geographies where.
Yeah. So the reason why you want the ionic clay deposit, the reason why you want the ionic clay deposit is because the whole front end you don't need on a conventional mine. And the capital required. So like a Mountain Pass, Molycorp, if they were to build that deposit today, compared to somebody building the equal amount of production on an ionic clay deposit, an ionic clay deposit would be 40 cents on the dollar in capital. It's that much better, right? And the other beautiful thing about ionic clays is that when you separate out an ion of rare earths from a clay, it's a loose affiliation. You're literally stripping it with ammonium sulfate at a pH of 4, which you can drink. I wouldn't drink ammonium sulfate, but pH 4 you can handle. It's like nothing. You get it on your hands. And you're just washing the clay with this ammonium sulfate. And within 5 minutes, you get 70% of your payload within 5 minutes.
Wow.
That, my friend, is metallurgy. And I'm a chemical engineer, did a lot of metallurgy in the gold space. And that is something that's just so unique. And so really, you've got the stuff in Asia, China, you can't touch, Thailand, Laos, Myanmar, bit spicy, but you can get in there. You got to go in with the right people. And then, we came across a deposit about 3 years ago in Brazil, and it's a company called Meteoric. And they have the largest ionic clay deposit outside of China that I've ever seen. And when I met with the executive chairman, when he pitched me the story, I couldn't believe it. I actually thought he was lying to me, and it turns out he wasn't. And we actually we financed the company on the last couple of rounds. And this deposit is, when we met with them, the deposit was defined about 400,000 tons, which is a lot, right? If you think about Kabanga, which is a beautiful world-class nickel deposit in Tanzania, the resource report says like 55 million tons. It's more like 80 million tons at 3.2% nickel, but 80 million tons, that's world-class. This was 400 million tons, so 5 times that of Kabanga. We're talking about different commodities. I'm just trying to give you the idea of what the scale of this is, right?
What's the stock done in the last 3 years?
Well, we'll get into that. And they defined the resource down to 5 meters. They defined about 150 million tons at the first go. I met with them. The metallurgy was lined out, so it was ionic down to 7 meters, and you had about 400 million tons of this beautiful ionic clay, right? And then we financed them. I think we've raised them about, us with a group of other investment banks have raised them about $60 million. That's all gone to the ground. And what they've done is they've shown that the weathering profile goes to depth, which means it's ionic at depth. Because if it's not ionic, it doesn't matter. It's just go plant a tree and go look somewhere else, right? But it's ionic. The zone of oxidation carries to depth. So now the new resource is 1.5 billion tons.
Jesus.
Right. 1.5 billion tons at 2,500 ppm. And we think that's about 3 to 4 times the grade of an average Chinese clay deposit. So it's a high grade. It's got tonnage like nobody's seen before. Like, I still can't believe I came across this thing. And the metallurgy's exactly what you'd expect from an ionic clay deposit. It's 5 minutes, ammonium sulfate, 4 pH, 70% payability to depth. So it carries to depth. It's got the tonnage. Now, you asked about what the stock did. So when we met with the company, the stock was at like 10 cents. We financed it at 12. The rare earth prices when we met with them were at about, 150 to $200 for neodymium, praseodymium. Then the buzz of the story got out on the street. We raised some money. They start putting out good results. And then all of a sudden, the rare earth prices in the international market start to fall because you had good news out of Meteoric. And that deposit, it's got the scale to really make an impact, right?
Right.
And if you're thinking from an investor, you catch every peak in every rare earth cycle, right? Because it's here for 300 years. Like, your kids' will be talking about this thing. And so it's a wonderful deposit. And so and then you had Mark Chalmers, who runs EFR, great company. It's in Blanding, Utah. He decided to go in the rare earth space and start buying up monazite ore, which is high in uranium and thorium. So he's the only person in the U.S. can handle this. And there's not many global players that can handle this, right? Except for the Chinese. There's somebody in Australia, and you've got Mark down in Blanding. So he starts this rare earth thing, and he goes into the market and he's buying monazite, which is, beautiful high grade rare earth ore. He's buying it for $700 a ton. He starts separating into neodymium oxide and praseodymium, like really separating the rare earths. And then he goes back into the market to buy another 40,000 tons of monazite, and the price goes from 700 to 10,000.
Wow.
So why is that? The Chinese say, I don't want him in production. I don't care, $10,000, because their margin, they look at the supply chain as like, if you want my copper, my nickel, my rare earths, my whatever, buy my car.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have an LME exchange, right?
Right.
And so the whole world, because they're leading this, is going to have to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did is they went into the market, they drove the price of monazite up. Mark couldn't do the buy and process. So we went into the market and we bought a bunch of heavy mineral sands deposits. One of them was the Toliara in Madagascar, which is, again, world-class, 75 to 100 years. It's going to give you 10,000 tons of REO every year, forever. It's like one of those assets. You just put your capital in the ground and it's paid for after 3 years, and you got 100 years of just, depreciated capital. So, and so they destroyed the monazite price. So Mark couldn't make any money on the rare earths. So he goes dormant. And then MEI, that stock, when we financed it, went from 10 or 12 cents. It went to 33 cents at the beginning of 2024, right? And then the Chinese came in and started pounding the neodymium, praseodymium price. 150 to 200 turns into 50. The underlying commodity price just sewered the entire industry because none of the Western producers can produce at $50 neodymium except for MEI and except for EFR, when EFR gets its own feed of monazite from its heavy mineral sand project in Madagascar, which I think there's good news coming on the permitting there, and that will be in production, and it's massive, and so he will be a real player in the space over time, and MEI will be the big winner out of the space as well over time. So
in silver, a lot of the silver is produced as a byproduct by the big majors. Do they have any participation or productivity in rare earths, or not really?
No. You get some maybe out of like a uranium mine up in Saskatchewan, but it's too much of a headache to worry about it, right? Like
it's too complicated.
Yeah. And you have to think about this too, Trey. Like, what's really important for everybody to understand, we're not talking about like billions of tons a year of consumption.
Right.
I don't know, it depends who you talk to, but anywhere from 150 to 200,000 tons of refined rare earths a year, and that's it. Right? Think about that. Like 200,000 tons.
Right.
Like, it's nothing, right? But we're fighting over it now. It's what makes the rare earth space a wonderful space to be a part of. It encompasses everything that we're going through today, right? It's geopolitics. The two big players. China's got it all. America's got none of it. So now there's this imbalance. So this trade war, all this, so it's fun.
Right.
And then it's all the new technologies. Like, every single windmill in the world will have neodymium iron boron magnets in every single. That's what's driving the current, right? Are those magnets. So they are so important for the green transition. And the green transition, I don't care what anybody says, is real. I mean, the West is slowing it down because we need time to catch up with the Chinese. I think we underestimated how proficient they were in manufacturing and how proficient they were in improvising, and actually how proficient they've become at adding value to other people's technologies, right? Like, all these technologies that they've perfected, they all started here, not in Canada. We did a few of these things, but the States, the UK, Europe, and Canada, right? And then the Chinese take it and they throw horsepower at it. And they make a better mousetrap, right? So
here's
it's a
the
fascinating
big
world to be a part of.
How many publicly traded rare earth companies are there?
Too many to even count.
Oh, really?
The question should be, how many rare earth companies are investable?
There we go. That was going to be number 2.
I would say there's probably, and I don't want to do any disservice to the industry. So if the rare earth price were to all of a sudden, neodymium goes to $500 a kilogram, it changes the landscape. So what's not economic today becomes economic tomorrow, right?
Understood.
But on today's prices, right, there's probably 5 or 6, 7 companies that you could put your capital into, and you'll make money. You lose money, but you won't go broke owning these ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other ones,
For
you're
Canadian
flipping the coin a bit.
investors, they could contact SCP, and
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
and your
100%.
team
We've got a
would be happy.
great analyst in Justin Chan.
Uh-huh.
Talk to Justin. He knows the space, as well as anybody in the industry, and he's a great person to talk to about this, and he's a good conversationalist because he brings in the whole universe into it too, right?
And for Canadian investors, the best way to get to SCP is through the front door, through a website. How do people?
Yeah, just go to scp-rf.com and just send a request, or come through you, Trey, or just go to the webpage, and as long as people have accounts with us, we're happy and happy to talk to them about how the world works in the rare space,
right?
Amongst other things.
And so to the degree that you're comfortable, are there a couple of names that you would highlight as interesting ones to study at this point in the cycle?
Yeah, well, the two that I like, and full disclosure, we finance them,
Okay.
but we think what we try to do at SCP is, you've got all these industries: the gold industry, the silver industry, the rare earth industry, the nickel, the copper. You try to just high grade the best of class within each industry. So there are a lot of good companies within our universe,
Mm-hmm.
But there's two in particular that we really like the most of all others, and they're primary deposits. Well, one's primary, one's would be secondary, but MEI would be one that if I were looking at trying to understand what a great rare earth project looks like,
Mm-hmm.
I would go to MEI's webpage and I'd run through what they have.
Okay.
Because it is a great team. First of all, it always starts with the team.
Mm-hmm.
They're all experienced. The guy they have designing and building the plant came out of First Quantum, which was a coup, because First Quantum is one of the few companies that always would deliver a capital project on time, on budget, and even sometimes under budget, which is amazing. So they've got the proper team. They have what I think is the best rare earth deposit in the world, simply because of the ionic properties and, more importantly, the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you have 1.5 billion tons, this is not a mining project, right? This is an industrial engineering project. How do we move earth? How do we separate rare earths from this massive endowment in a most efficient way? And the beautiful thing about it is, once the clay has been stripped of its rare earths, it'll have residual ammonia in it.
Mm-hmm.
And this section of Brazil, and I'm not sure if they're allowed to do this yet, but it's an undertaking I'm sure the company's looking into. Because ammonium's a fertilizer. You take the spent clay, because when you strip a rare earth off a clay molecule, the ammonia attaches to the clay, the rare earth attaches to the sulfide, and so you have a fertilized clay with no rare earths in it. And you take that clay, you put it back in, you plant a tree, because there's a ton of eucalyptus farms in the neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. So that would consume the residual ammonia. So you're doing something for the environment. And then you're growing a tree. Mm-hmm. So all in all, it's probably the most green project, if that matters to anyone these days. It's probably the most green mining project in the world, because all their inputs come from green power, and it's 98% of the power in this area in Brazil is all green. Mm-hmm. So it's green energy. And there's no residual waste. You're taking clay, you're stripping it, and you're putting it back where you got it from, and planting a tree.
And the other company was
EFR. Now, EFR is a special company. Mm-hmm. Mark Chalmers runs that. Mm-hmm. He's just a great person, to be honest, and he's a great CEO. Mm-hmm. He went on. He took an opposite route to what the guys at MEI have done. He's gone after the monazite streams, mm-hmm. because he has the license to process radionuclides in Blanding, Utah, mm-hmm. and he's also a uranium producer. So anybody in the audience that likes uranium, and uranium's got a nice life ahead of it too, by the way. Mm-hmm. But he's got a beautiful uranium business, and he's got a beautiful rare earth business. And he bought a 75-year to 100-year asset in Madagascar. He went into Bahia, Brazil, for another heavy rare earth heavy mineral sands project. So he's going to be producing rutile and zircon, right? He'll do a deal with like one of the big companies like Chemours or something like that. So they'll handle the ilmenite. He basically gets the rare earth concentrate for free. He'll ship that to Blanding, Utah, and he's already separating. So he's making magnet grade neodymium oxide now. So he's done a hell of a job, and the stock has not gotten the appreciation that it should. That's for sure. And you know, it's like in life. It takes time to see what if you come up with an idea and you execute on the idea. Usually, the good ideas take a little bit of time to unfold. On wow, that was a great idea, right? And what Mark has done at EFR, I think the investment community will look back at this in the next 2 to 3 years and go, holy, he's what a great idea, because he's going to nail it. That's going to become a major U.S. industrial watch.
Wow.
Because he's got the asset base now, right? He's got a great team of engineers. That's the other thing I like about EFR. He has human capital. He has chemical engineers that understand hydrometallurgy, understand separation. They're separating. There's not too many people in America can do what Mark can do, right? So he's a bit of a unicorn in the space. So I think the two best names in the space just strictly making rare earth oxides and probably down to the metals is MEI, and that's on the ASX. It's MEI is the symbol, and then EFR, which is on the New York and the Toronto, and that symbol I think in Toronto is like EFR, and down the States it's EFRR or something. I don't know. But anyway, those are the two best ones in my mind,
right?
Because it has great management and the asset base is strong. So you'll hit the asymptote of pain in a down market, but the asset quality is so good you will make it up in a good market, and you'll forget about the bad market really quick. Trey.
We'll give the quick disclaimer. We're not recommending purchase, but
no, we're not recommending anything. I'm just saying those are the best
to take a look at if you want to learn about the industry. Okay, last question. So the cycles better than anybody, and just because rare earths are on the front page of the Times does not mean it's necessarily a great time. So here's my put you under pressure question. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think we are in the cycle? Is this a good time to get involved, or are there?
Yeah, I think it is. It's a great time to get involved because, say what you want about the Chinese state. They have done an incredible job of stitching up this industry. Right? It is a Harvard business case on how to monopolize an industry and own it, and they own it. So the West knows they have a problem. The one thing I love about America is when they decide to do something, they roll their sleeves up, they get going in a direction, and everybody goes in the direction, right? So don't count America out ever. And so the rare earth space, which we're working with some American companies, some policymakers, and I can tell you, it's of utmost importance to the West. I'm going to say, not just the U.S., because it's important to Canada too. It's important to North America, to be honest with you. It's important to everybody that these industries are supported top down, right? This cannot be an organic thing because, when you produce a magnet, you got to sell it somewhere. And when the Chinese have 98% of the downstream, you're selling to China.
Right.
So you have to have some sort of FDR policy, like a New Deal type of thing, which we have with the IRA program, but like specifically for the rare earth industry. And I envision one day where, the U.S. is going to support, the West will support the Western development of its rare earth industry. It will have to subsidize it, I think, for probably 10 to 15 years. And when you get government subsidies, you know that the businesses will become robust at some point because it's got the proper capitalization of it. And I think it's a great time to be investing in all Western critical minerals that the Chinese state dominates in, because these are the areas that if we want to reindustrialize as the West wants to do, then you've got to support this industry. And I think you're going to get big support at the government level, and then all of these companies will eventually catch a bid, and they'll have an offtake. and they will slowly reindustrialize this industry within the West. And if you think about it, 1997 Molycorp owned the entire world's global rare earth space. It really did.
Wow.
And then China opens up in 93.
Uh-huh.
And by 98, Molycorp, bye-bye. They would sell, like Molycorp would sell like cerium for $5 a pound. Chinese would come over, 30 cents a kilogram, like 70 cents a pound. Like, they're like, why are we producing it? We'll just buy your stuff and run it through the mill. You know, that's what happened.
Right.
And they just like, you hear about all these guys like complaining about the Chinese dumping steel. Well, I can tell you what they did in the rare earth space.
Mm-hmm.
You could buy it. I mean, you could, whatever you wanted, you could get it. You could get it for cheap because I was selling it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just wild. And, you know, so
well, I'm happy to
I
hear.
think you have to be there if you want to have a balanced portfolio and you want to be a part of this green industry, the rare earth space front and center.
Yeah, because I'm happy to hear you believe that the governments in the West have the resolve to really vertically integrate anything anymore. I'm a little worried about our focus, but I'm wrong on that.
Well, I hope you are wrong, Trey, and you're not wrong on the gold and silver side. I can tell you that your work's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope you're wrong on this, because if we don't, then let's stop the charade now,
right.
And let's continue to serve beer and coffee and just buy our stuff from the Chinese. And then our society over time will become stupid. Right. And that's what it's doing. Because if you think about what the Chinese, this is how brilliant their plan is, right? If you produce a rare earth concentrate in the West, right, which is the most basic step in the rare earth cycle, right, they will pay you a beautiful premium for that,
mm-hmm.
right? Intermediate. So they take it, they digest it, they separate it, then they take the separated molecules, they make magnets, they make catalysis, they make a lot of electronic circuits with it. They add all the value. When you add all the value, you have engineering, electricians, your society is smarter, and you perpetuate a smarter society. If you're only selling a concentrate, mm-hmm. like blowing up rock, crushing it, and mm-hmm. floating it, like Fred Flintstone can do that. I'm sorry, mm-hmm. right? And mm-hmm. I don't want to be Fred Flintstone for the rest of my life. I'd like, to be a little more sophisticated, right? Mm-hmm. So we need the support. We need to get back to what Dow Chemical used to be, DuPont used to be, Union Carbide. Right. Union Carbide made ever-ready batteries and Pampers. Dow invented, like polyethylene and Kevlar and mm-hmm. all American inventions, Western inventions, right?
Right.
So we've gotten away from that. And whether we like it or not, I think we're going back to that 1970s to mid 1980s kind of reindustrialization. That's what the world's going to look like. And I actually think it's good, because I don't like what's become of the West as far as like the work ethic, right. The manufacturing base. Like, we don't make anything anymore, right?
Our biggest
we used to perpetuate this stuff.
The U.S.'s biggest export is dollars.
Yeah.
And it's been
but the biggest thing, but you think about the whole system that we live in is an American system.
Right.
Like the UN is, goes back to World War II. Everything that we live in mm-hmm. is an American system post World War II, right? Mm-hmm. And we've just gotten lazy. So, we got to get back to work, roll our sleeves up and take it on the chin, and give a little bit of credit to China, because you know what? They did what we would have done, taken the ball and run harder down the field, because they wanted to become more wealthy. We're already there. And, when you already get there, then you become lazy, right? 2 trips a year, 6 cars in the driveway, mm-hmm. throwing out food from the fridge. You know what I mean? It's just we become gluttons, and we've got to get back to hard work. So I have no problem with it. But I do believe, I don't believe basic manufacturing will come back. I think common sense will prevail on that. But I think the IP and the value add has to stay in the West. It has to be protected. Mm-hmm. One example which really ticks me off, to be honest with you, is Huawei. Mm-hmm. Huawei is Huawei is Mandarin for Nortel networks. Mm-hmm. What used to be 35% of the TSX index, right?
Right.
We invented so many things in the fiber optic world, all the telephony stuff. A lot of it came out of Nortel, and it was all stolen by the Chinese. Now they have Huawei, and we don't have a Nortel.
Right.
So anyway, it's a wonderful world we live in, and I do think the West is going to reindustrialize, because what's going on today with these tariffs, it's all about China, right? So you got to support it, and I would say they already are, Trey. The IRA, the program, it's just what FDR did with the New Deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like they say, Intel won a $8 billion contract for their plant in Arizona. Well, who went up against Intel for that? I wasn't asked to tender my plant design, right?
Right.
That was a handout by the government. Let's call it what it was, right?
Right.
But I don't have a problem with that, because we gotta put life back into the industry, get the industries off their back, and then put them back out into the public markets, and don't make the same mistake again.
Well,
right.
On that note, you got me so pumped up. I want to go look at the screen. And thank you very much for your
Hey, no
enthusiasm.
problem. I appreciate your time, Trey, always.
A lot of
any
stuff
questions
for people to digest, and we'll check back with you in a couple of months.
Okay, Trey, thank you very much.
All right, Dave. Thank you,
and
sir.
thanks to the whole Wealthion team. Okay, everybody,
Really
take care.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. No problem. Anytime.
Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.